Espresso, where we taste espresso for you. This time we're actually going to discuss a video that got lost somehow in the whole electronic waves of the internets. We tried to see what the difference was when you ground the espresso for your shot 2 hours before, 1 hour before, 30 minutes before, and fresh just before pulling the shots. So we pulled all the shots at the same time. What we did was we also labeled, we did a blind testing, we labeled the bottom ones, and I did a blind testing on Rob to see if he could tell the difference. And what turned out is that he was wrong on all of them.
All of them?
All of them.
I had no idea.
Rob very much expected that he would be able to tell that if you grounded the coffee 2 hours before, the shot would taste very different and much worse than if you ground it fresh. And he actually reversed the two. He thought that this one, the one that was ground fresh, was actually the one that was 2 hours old, and the one that we ground 2 hours before was actually the fresh one. And then I think he mixed these two up as well, just to get them all wrong for fun.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show, we did this research. Obviously, we lost the video on it, but we believe from our taste and from our recipe on the Decent Espresso machine that you can grind your coffee at least 2 hours before actually pulling the shots.
Right, and there was no real difference. The variation between the shots was the sort of variation you'd expect anytime you pull shot to shot.
Yeah. Anyway,
and it all tasted great. So, this is inspired by Scott Rao, because he said some stuff about pre-grinding about half an hour before to increase your...
Yes.
Something, right?
So in his experiments that started with putting filters underneath and then using the Decent with a pause, a bloom, to start increasing extraction rates from about 20% to I think he gets up to 27% almost. Essentially what he found was that if you use aged coffee, like coffee that's about 2 to 3 months old, it will actually give you a higher extraction rate, even if you don't do anything else. If you just use a coffee that was roasted 3 months ago, it'll give you a higher extraction rate. So on top of that, he was like, if you also instead grind your coffee and then let it sit for 30 minutes to an hour, that will also raise your extraction rate. So that's where we were like, well, if you can do that, we have the bloom on the Decent Espresso machine, then perhaps we'll end up with the same flavors, maybe not. And it turned out that actually the tasted better, very slightly better.
It was slightly
the older shot.
It was, I think actually the older shot was a little sweeter. I remember the one that I thought was the oldest was actually the freshest, and it was just the most acidic. And from our previous or today's testing, where we had two coffees, one that was pulled from the freezer the night before, and then one that was pulled today. Again, the older one was actually sweeter, which I wonder if that is indicative of the extraction rate, which we should have tested the TDS. We forgot to do that.
We'll get around to that. We're because of that, we're inspired to do more experiments with aging coffee in the freezer and seeing the difference over a few days. What happens if we thaw it out 5 days after aging it for 2 months? What happens if we, do 1 day after aging it for 2 months? Will that actually change the rate at which it ages? Also maybe grinding before. And we haven't even we tested 2 hours before grinding, but we didn't test 12 hours before.
Right, 24 hours.
Before pulling, grinding before pulling. So there's all sorts of explorations for us to have, and hopefully next time we'll have more things for you. Hit us up in the comments. We would love to hear from you, your thoughts, things that maybe we're wrong about, or things that you want to hear about and you want us to experiment on in the channel.
And just remember that, all these assumptions that we've made in the coffee world, maybe it's time to start testing them and seeing what actually works, and at the end of the day, as long as we can have amazing coffee, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So.
Also, try to, when you test, do blind testing if you're tasting. Try to make sure it's
have
blind.
Someone else do it for you so you can taste and not know.
Because
it's fun.
Because sometimes what we expect, we assume will just naturally taste a certain way. When you do it blind, you can be very surprised that it was not what you thought. But I'm Dave.
And I'm Rob.
This is Just Espresso, where we taste espresso for you.
Cheers.
Cheers.